This morning, the member for North Abaco had reserved the floor. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco. For the member for Marco City, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to have this opportunity to be here today representing the people of Marco City, Grand Bahama, and to represent this Free National Movement government that is today introducing a piece of legislation that is a fulfillment of our commitment to the Bahamian people and is a step in the right direction in terms of transforming our over-the-hill communities and historic communities. Mr. Speaker, let me first extend condolences on behalf of my wife Burleise, the Marco City family, to the family of Nelson Davis, formerly of Sandy Point, Abaco, Cassius Bowe, on the death of his mom, Gwendolyn Bowe, and to wish a speedy recovery to Nehemiah Clark and Stanley Simmons. I would like to join the chorus of voices that have extended condolences to Elijah Obed, someone who spent a tremendous amount of time in Yellow Elder Garden, where my mom, Sister Laura Benson, still lives, and where I spent a considerable amount of my youth. He made all of us proud in terms of his accomplishments on the international scene, and he also, in his life, reminds us as a people that we ought to be more considerate of those persons who have done a great deal for the growth and development of our country, who in the moment, despite being a source of pride for us, we manage not to sustain the kind of humanity we ought to in celebrating them and empowering them throughout the rest of their lives. I also wish to extend condolences to my colleague and his siblings, Dr. Dwayne Sands, who, despite suffering a tremendous loss of an iconic Bahamian father, is still at work at this moment, seeking to do the people's business. We spent the lunch hour, Parliamentary Secretary Carlton Bowen and I and Dr. Sands in a press conference doing the people's business. I'd also like to extend condolences to the family and members of Five Porches. When I was an active member in the student Christian movement at AF Adley, Kofi spent a lot of time in most of the schools. In fact, he was the founder of the student Christian movement, as I recall, in the Bahamas. And I always admire plain-speaking Bahamians who are very candid about their views, whether you like it or not. In politics, you don't often meet people like that. And so it is always refreshing when you could meet Bahamians who speak up to your face and tell you what they believe, or in his case, what thus said the Lord. We've lost a number of iconic Bahamians over the recent months in particular. The athletic world in particular suffered tremendous loss of Bahamian talent, and I send out condolences to all of the families who are bereaved. And then, of course, Fenton Nemore, who holds a special place in my heart. He is a committed Bahamian, an avid sportsman, an outspoken advocate for positions that he held dearly. And I enjoyed the many times I've had a chance to speak with Fenton. He is one of those Bahamian sons who, like his mentor, Dr. Bernard Nottage, has made a contribution, suffered a lot of ridicule because of some of the stances that he took, but nevertheless, he remained committed to the cause. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, it is so disconcerting that it is only in our passing that so many persons find time to express admiration and respect for the position that you take or that you took in your life. Mr. Speaker, the Economic Empowerment Zone Bill 2018 is a fulfillment of a campaign promise. It is a step in the right direction. It is not the complete blueprint for the transformation of our people's lives, but if we were to be honest, we would say that it is a significant contribution. And the truth is, some valuable suggestions have been made in this place in terms of how to improve this bill, and this is a responsive government, and we have demonstrated over these past 14 months that wherever amendments are required, we are prepared to make the requisite amendments in order to improve the bill, because we are not in a competition for brownie points. We are literally competing for the souls and the minds of our people, and whatever is required legislatively, policy-wise, or in programs and projects, we are committed to implementing them for the transformation of our people's lives. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I just want to have a conversation about this initiative that is so important to this administration and to our leader. And as you get to know members of this party, members of the public, I would say to many of us who have lived this life. Certainly for me, for the majority of my adult life, I have lived over the hill. Prior to relocating to Grand Bahama, I spent 12 years in Step Street, Fox Hill. My family grew up in Angliston, and as I have said before, we have lived through no less than 7 corners in Angliston. And so, Mr. Speaker, I understand firsthand, through studies, through observation, many of the challenges faced by my family, our families over the hill. And each time a government makes an attempt to change the condition of our people for the better, we all ought to be on the same page, even if we differ in some of the strategies. The Grandstand Development Project was one attempt by the former administration to address conditions over the hill. And while some progress was made in that regard, Mr. Speaker, it clearly did not go far enough, and it was not sustained in the way that it was envisioned. The transformation of this country, particularly in the Family Islands, took place in large measure with the victory in 1992. And the gains made by the former administration, by the Progressive Liberal Party, was extended in a very dramatic way by the leadership of the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram. Perry Christie, the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, introduced an internationally tried model of urban renewal, and in his description painted a wonderful picture of what was possible in changing the over-the-hill community. For a number of reasons that I don't intend to dissect, Mr. Speaker, the Urban Renewal Initiative, while it had some successes, still substantially fell short of the stated goal. Before I continue, Mr. Speaker, let me just qualify that so that I do not lose any members of the public that are still in a partisan mode. When one speaks of urban renewal, essentially, we're talking about 2 broad categories of changes. One is a transformation of the physical environment, and 2, it's a transformation of the human condition. So when we talk about transforming the physical environment, it is safe to say that we should be able to take pictures, and if you like, a movie, of the present state of an area, and after intervention by the government and its and other stakeholders, we should be able to take an after picture of the same area and see a fundamental difference. So, for example, if you or I claim that we are making a fundamental difference in transforming Over the Hill, or, as was the case of the former administration, transforming the urban centers, then a snapshot of Step Street, Coconut Grove, or Jenny Street, or Step Street, or West Hill Street should look a lot different after government has intervened with tremendous resources and stakeholders have weighed in. We should see a fundamental difference in the way the street look. But the pattern of development we have experienced for the last few decades, we have witnessed political figures holding ceremonies with children out of school, bands, marching bands, multiple ministers in politics and of religion, seated outside, in some cases, an 800, maybe 900 square foot house that has just been refurbished, and it's no longer a 600 square foot dilapidated house. It is now a 900 square foot house that a family can now comfortably reside in. The outside toilet has been eliminated. Infrastructure for light and water is now included. And I believe that that is significant. But that is not urban renewal. That is not transformation of Over the Hill. So, Mr. Speaker, knowing the Prime Minister and my colleagues as I do, I am convinced that we are not going to engage in those kinds of practices, largely because this population clearly understands that changing 1 or 2 or 3 homes in a corner that has 15 others like it and 40 other corners in the same community where people are living in similar conditions should not and is not impressive to anyone, any right-thinking Bahamian. And so, Mr. Speaker, a part of what is envisioned by the Prime Minister is that we take a panoramic view and take pictures of the present state of affairs in 2018, and we ask you to examine the progress that will be made over the course of the next few years. So in the physical environment, there should be a difference. That is precisely why right now we are benchmarking how many homes are without proper infrastructure for light and water in these communities, with a view of being able quantitatively to calculate how many of them are no longer in that condition. I said, Mr. Speaker, that the transformation of Over the Hill is both about a transformation of the physical environment, but it's also true that we must transform the human condition, which means that when we examine the indices, that is, how many persons out of this quadrant have been expelled from school or have simply dropped out, how many persons before our courts hail from this particular geographical area, or how many persons who are incarcerated or who are now dead came from this particular area. What is the statistics as it relates to unplanned pregnancies? That we should be able to see a change in the indices, the indicators of how we are living socially in these environments. So at the core, the transformation of Over the Hill, the transformation of our urban centers is both physical and it is social in large measure. And when I use the word social, I'm using it, Mr. Speaker, in a very broad context, because we are also talking about making sure that in these communities that the glue exists that brings us together as a people, which is why vibrancy of culture and appreciation of who we are as a people is an indispensable part of transforming Over the Hill. That's precisely why we sought to revive culture in the park, so that we are able, through the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, to go into communities, identify talents, put those talents on display, bring national talent also to interact with local talent, so that persons can both appreciate who they are, who they see in the mirror, and at the same time discover some skills that might very well become their passion, and those passions may pay their bills. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we are on track to create a movement, Because the truth is, Mr. Speaker, nothing short of a movement is going to change over the hill. No government, despite its best intentions, have the capacity to fundamentally change the conditions of Bahamians unless unless all of us buy into the vision that our communities can in fact be better and different than it is today, and that it is a shared responsibility. This is not an F&M project. National development is a Bahamian people's project, and we happen to be leading the charge at the moment. And on this side, certainly, I recognize, working with these men and women, that they understand that they are merely vehicles to usher in the change required by our people. And so, Mr. Speaker, one of the observations that I've made and one of the experiences I've participated in over the last 14 months is that each ministry is committed to forming meaningful partnerships with private sector, non-governmental agency partners. Because the only way for us to dramatically, not merely incrementally move the development of this country forward is for us to work in partnership with each other. In Marco City, prior to the election, one of the things that my team said to the people of Marco City was that we are not your salvation, we are your partners. The truth is, in order to help persons who were experiencing difficulty with the damages and ravages of hurricane, the residents of Marco City needed the church participation. Some members who had damages had to go to the church for a portion of that help. They went to friends and relatives for another portion. They went to government for a portion, and they came to us who sought to provide political leadership. It was a partnership, as is this important work that is being done by our Prime Minister and colleagues. This is a partnership. And so I say through you to our people, Mr. Speaker, that we have to be a part of a movement to transform the conditions under which we live, to not only meet the challenges that we are presently experiencing, but to seize the many opportunities that my generation and the generation before me have not successfully delivered. Despite the best efforts of the government that led us to majority rule and independence, there was still a lot of work to be done. Despite the deliverance ushered in by the Honorable Hubert Ingram, there was still a lot of work left to be done. And so today it's fallen to us to pick up the mantle and help change our community. And even when this term is over, while we are sure that you will see some fundamental differences, the next generation must know that they have some work to do. At the core of this initiative is empowerment. Mr. Speaker, I have listened carefully to a number of critiques of the Prime Minister's vision for transforming over the hill and empowering our people. And I thought it unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that persons could not embrace the clear evidence of ways in which this piece of legislation leads to the empowerment of our people. And let me say, this legislation does not occur in a vacuum. It is a part of an overall trust to transform our people's lives. But let me focus on empowerment for a moment. There are several preconditions that must exist if a person is to be empowered. And empowered, Mr. Speaker, in this context only means that you and I ought to be the chief agent, the main architect in our own development. That's the goal. The goal of government should really be about how do you put the citizens who have trusted you to lead, how do you put them in a position where they see themselves as the main agent for changing their lives? That the government has a role to play, mommy and daddy has a role to play, the educators do, but the truth is, if it must be to a large extent, it is up to me. Governments are about facilitating the empowerment of their people. And so one of the things that must happen if people are to be empowered, and this bill contributes to it, is one, people must have access to information. And so it is important, and it has been important to us, to be open and transparent in our communication with the public about what our intentions are and how we intend to achieve those ends. And where we have fallen short in this regard, from Prime Minister to every member of this team, have not been ashamed to come back and say, in this case, we have erred in our communication to you. We apologize. We seek to get it right the next time around. But access to information is important. And that is why we've taken on what internally for some is an unpopular position, that we will seek to introduce the Fiscal Responsibility Act that holds us to a higher standard. We'd introduce in this term the Freedom of Information Act, because it is about access to information. There are some smarter people than many of us in here out there in this community, and we believe to the extent that they could be a check and balance on decisions we are making or contemplating, it augurs well for our democracy, because we trust our people, and we don't believe the act of being elected or appointed have suddenly transformed us into geniuses. This administration is committed to giving access to information. And that is precisely why making sure that education is affordable is a part of this overall thrust. Freedom to enroll in BTVI, the College of the Bahamas, at a cost-effective rate where tuition fees are waived, and it should not be alarming or disconcerting to anyone if someone has to buy a kit to accompany the free tuition. All of us should have some skin in the game and invest in our own salvation and transformation. That is not too much to ask. Someone who is constantly the recipient of free gifts often do not appreciate the values of them. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, if someone is to be empowered, they must have access to decision-making bodies. The people must have a say in how they are governed, which is why it is important for churches to have young people and women on their board of directors, which is why the College of the Bahamas increasingly put younger persons on their board who are more idealistic, have a lot more energy than those of us who are younger, longer. This is precisely why young persons such as the honorable member from Baintown and St. Barnabas have been, and of course from Seabreeze, have been nominated and have been successful and given substantial responsibility, because all segments of our community should have access to the decision-making bodies. That's why we believe in town meetings and consultation, because there are things we can miss when we talk only among ourselves. This bill is about empowerment, and so having access to decision-making bodies is important. Thirdly, there must be access to resources. And of course, I've heard much discussion about this bill not empowering our people. The truth of the matter is, if one listens carefully, one would clearly be able to see that a $1 million investment in the National Endowments for the Arts is a $1 million invested on top of multiple grants that already exist, that adds up to the tune of millions of dollars in this budget, is presently available to persons who are minded to start significant initiatives. So, for example, Mr. Speaker, we know the success story of Bahamas Striping, of Imagine Graphics, of numerous other businesses that started with small grants. Those grants turned into hundreds of thousands and now millions of dollars investment. In other words, the symbolic step of making available substantial amount of cash will translate in the startup of numerous businesses that will be transformational in the economy of the Bahamas. And so, for the short film maker who happens now to be on the global scene with feature films, those feature films came from the startup of short films right here in the Bahamas with shoestring budgets. One cannot begin to imagine what Bahamians, when given seed funding, can do with that seed funding to create transformational movies, books, songs, handicraft, visual arts, or can stage a play that can be transformational for the audience that watches it, for the studios that invest in it. So, Mr. Speaker, there are numerous mechanisms being utilized by this administration to ensure that the over-the-hill community, that the residents would have access to capital to realize their aspirations and dreams. $5 million being made available to micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, Mr. Speaker, is not a drop in the bucket. For many of our citizens who have visions of starting or growing an existing business, the major constraint that they have is capital. In the ministry that I now have the honor of leading with a talented team of men and women, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that there is a database of trials that have been conducted in the marine sciences area on a number of potential business ventures. The science clearly shows that a number of these ventures have the potential to succeed if they are scaled up in a dramatic way. The same thing is true in the agriculture sector, both on the crop as well as the livestock side. The fundamental obstacle and constraint faced by these potential startup businesses is resources constraint, the absence of capital. And so when this administration, in its wisdom, set aside, along with monies already in the budget, funds that will assist new businesses and businesses that are about to get started, that was done with the understanding that those marine resources studies that have been conducted that are now in a database, the only thing they lack now is the capital. And commercial banks, given their present structure, given their policies and mandate from their shareholders, are less likely to invest in these enterprises because they are risk averse to these kinds of operations. The government and venture capital funds can now fill that funding space, can step in and assist these businesses in getting started. And so what is true in the creative arts is also true in agriculture and marine resources. So it is untrue that this bill is not an empowering bill. Thirdly, BAIC has as a responsibility to assist those clients who are interested in writing successful business plans. These business plans can be used, whether it's with the Venture Capital Fund, the Bank of the Bahamas, Bahamas Development Bank, or with commercial institutions, or used as a basis of pursuing crowdfunding. These plans can result in attracting required resources. So this government, through its various organs, have the potential to do some transformational things in our over-the-hill and creative and historic communities. What is different, I believe, about the approach being taken today by this administration is that every minister has been mandated to work in tandem with their colleagues and to reduce duplication of services so that we can be far more effective and cost efficient in the implementation of our government's vision. Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up this presentation, I would only say, Mr. Speaker, that we as an administration will protect the rights of our people, but we will also challenge our people to exercise responsibility. It is our responsibility to eliminate roadside garages, properly dispose of garbage in our community, to remove derelict vehicles, to ensure that our homes are not falling in a state of disrepair. Mr. Speaker, we appeal to all of our partners, NGOs, faith-based organizations, civil society, educational institutions, to stand with us. Stand with us on the letter of the law, but also the spirit of the law. And the spirit is that we are committed to joining persons on all political sides of the divide, persons from all religious denominations. We believe that it's important that at this time in our country's history, we turn to each other instead of on each other, eliminate the partitions that divide us, so that we are able to change our people's lives. The Minister of Finance is well on the way, looking at tax reform that would enable corporate citizens to contribute to important initiatives over the hill and benefit with tax give back over time. We believe in public-private partnerships that make sense for our people. This is precisely why we are pursuing this in a number of areas. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to be a member of this team. I am confident that our heart is in the right place. And while this bill does not provide all of the answers, I am absolutely convinced it is the right move. We are on the right road, headed in the right direction. And by the grace of God, we'll get to the destination together. Marco City supports this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I did not intend to really speak to this bill, as my colleagues have done such a fantastic job with it. However, there were a few points that were raised that I think warrant some comment. Before I do that, Mr. Speaker, I too want to express my condolences to the family of our colleague, Mr. Basil Sands, who is, as was stated by the member for Cat Island, a pioneer in the accounting profession. Certainly one that we in the profession revere and look to as a role model and a trailblazer. He and Maitland Cates and Clifford Culmer, Frankie Wilson, they were at the vanguard of this profession in terms of the Bahamianization of the profession. Even when I came into this profession, it was still pretty much dominated by foreigners. But with the example, pardon me? I don't think so. But with the examples and the support of people like these men, those of us who came after were able to achieve successful careers in this profession. And so certainly we owe him a great deal of gratitude and his family for his service, his leadership, and his mentorship to many of us. In fact, my wife started her career working for Mr. Sands. And she sent me a note this morning recalling how she went to him at one point because he had short her 3 cents on her pay. And when he asked her, "You coming to me for 3 cents?" She said, "Yes, you taught me well," because he was also very tight when it came to the dollars. So he had his impact on our society. And of course, we know about his other contributions throughout this community as a philanthropist and a leader in various civic organizations. I'd also like to express condolences to the family of Elijah Obed. I didn't know his other name, Ferguson, but I do remember him as a legend when I was a young boy growing up in Long Island, when he won his world championship, and there was a song about him. And I remember we used to go around singing that song. Yeah, Smokey 007, right. And so he certainly made a mark and legendary in this country. One of those sporting heroes, I suppose, that probably was at the vanguard before a lot of people knew the power of sports. So we certainly want to remember him. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to express condolences to Reverend Beecham Roberts in High Rock on the passing of his wife, Rena. Again, a stalwart of the community, and certainly one that I'm sure will be missed by her family, particularly her children, who I know very well. And I certainly do express my condolences to them. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate Ms. Joanna Evans, who has done fantastically well in the, I think, CAC games, where she's won 3 golds and I think a silver. Joanna continues to set records. And though we hype our track athletes, we must not forget that there are these young Bahamians who are out there doing fantastic things in their sport. She is certainly one that is making us very proud. She is a Grand Bahamian, so I'm doubly proud, and I know her parents very well. And So she's making, setting records. Every time I look, she's setting records at the University of Texas, where she's at school. And so I just want to express congratulations to her and to the entire Bahamas Swimming Association, because again, they continue to produce excellent athletes, and we ought to celebrate them in the same vein as we celebrate track and field athletes. Mr. Speaker, this bill before us today, as has been said, is really an opportunity for the government of the Bahamas to have a direct intervention in the true revitalization of these foundation communities of Baintown and Grantstown in the initial stages, and as the Prime Minister indicates, expanding out as we complete this pilot project. Mr. Speaker, I call them foundation communities because this is in fact where most of our successful Bahamians would have gotten their start. And I listened carefully to the opposition speak about the contributions that the PLP would have made and who cares about the poor and all of this. And I can't help but reflect that if this is the way that you love me, then love me a little less. Because the truth of the matter is that if you look at these communities, I mean, all of them basically, that have been represented by the Progressive Liberal Party from independence, and maybe even before. You look at them, and as I said while I was sitting, members who represent them, who have served in this government or in the government, really ought to hang their heads. They should really have nothing to say when it comes to this bill, and should be supporting it overwhelmingly. Because this at least is giving those people an opportunity. This is at least a step in the right direction. You see, Mr. Speaker, we seem to be content with playing politics with poor, vulnerable people. And you know, there's a saying that Bahamians have bought into, that they want to keep us dumb and stupid, so that when they speak and they tell us all these flowery things, and we're not able to decipher it, and so we just follow blindly. But the truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, this is a new day. And Bahamians are waking up. And they're not so easily led anymore. And we saw in the last general election a manifestation of that. You couldn't just tell them anything anymore. And so when the opposition stands up and talks about this side doesn't care about the poor and you're all trying to do political gimmickry and all the rest of it, it rings hollow, Mr. Speaker. Because for 40 years, 45 years, some of these communities have been represented by the other side. And the development has been regressive.
Honourable Member, Member Ferguson.
Okay, the member is
Chair
making,
recognizes the Honourable Member
thank you,
Ferguson.
Speaker. The member is making an assertion of historical fact. And it's certainly not my recollection of the history of what has happened in our country in terms of the advancement. In fact, most people who are in this house came originally from over the hill and were able to obtain medical degrees. Speaker, I'm asking the member to substantiate historically.
Honourable Member.
I can't finish my sentence, Speaker.
Honourable Member, that is not on a point of Honourable Member.
I'm asking the member to substantiate his
Honourable member.
allegations, Speaker.
Honourable Member.
Yes, Mr.
First
Speaker.
of all, it is the role of the chair to determine whether or not you're standing on a point of order.
Okay.
You are not standing on a point of order. You just simply have a different opinion.
So we're not
That is
to-
not for
these
point
things
of order.
Speaker, I just
Resume
want to
your
be sure,
seat.
Mr. Speaker, because
Resume your seat.
Speaker, you don't have to speak to me like that, Speaker. I will sit down, Mr. Speaker. I'll sit down. Your tone is
The
really
chair recognizes the
offensive.
Honourable Member for Grand Bahama.
And Mr. Speaker, for clarity, there is no doubt, and as I said when I started, that this is a foundation community. And that there were obviously a lot of very talented Bahamians that came out of these communities. But the problem is that from that time to this, we've seen a tremendous degradation in those communities with very little, if any, investment. That's the issue, Mr. Speaker. And again, I just say, you know, for anybody to stand up on that side to speak about they love the poor, quote unquote, and I don't like that word either. I think that's a bad word. But vulnerable communities, foundation communities, and to have treated them with the kind of contempt that they have, should be ashamed. Should be ashamed. And there's no excuse. You had the opportunity. You had the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, there was this concern about these communities, and this is what I really want to speak to with respect to the economic benefit to these communities. And my colleague from Marco City pretty much touched most of it. But I want the Bahamian people to know that, and the residents in these communities to know, and the Prime Minister would have gone through the trouble of having several town meetings, as well as presenting a white paper, as well as having printed supplements in the newspapers that explains what this program is about and the safeguards that are in this program to ensure that people are not taken advantage of. And there's this issue or this claim that this is going to cause gentrification, or big word to mean poor people get forced out of their communities. And this was taken into account in the design of this program. The leader of the opposition for Cat Island mentioned that there's no nexus between this program and the National Development Plan. That's absolutely untrue. I can tell you because I've seen it. We did the analysis to ensure that it lined up with the National Development Plan. And there are no gaps. So Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that this plan takes into account the need to ensure that there is a continuous stock of affordable living accommodations for persons who may be underprivileged and vulnerable. That's part of the plan. We speak about education. The plan speaks to ensuring that the schools in these neighborhoods, that the parks in these neighborhoods are upgraded, that there are after-school programs that will cater to these children, both in terms of their educational needs as well as their social needs. This is all part of the plan. Again, look at it. Obviously, you know, one of the things that is obvious, Mr. Speaker, is that I don't believe that the opposition has had an opportunity, and I'm going to put it that way, to read the white paper. I don't think they have. And they certainly haven't taken the opportunity to go to any of the town meetings so that they can be educated and further elucidate what it is that is being planned. Because the questions and the issues that they're raising have been addressed. There's no doubt about it. Have been addressed. So Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the education component, that has been considered. And I'm sure the Prime Minister will probably mention it when he wraps up. When it comes to making sure that there's affordable housing, that has been taken care of. Now, the other side to it is that I heard something that really kind of surprised me, was one, that the property values in the area may rise as a result of this effort. Well, I don't know about you, but I certainly hope it does. That is the point. You want to create equity and wealth for those residents, for those people that own the properties there. That's the idea. I already said that there is provision to ensure that there's affordable homes. But you want to make sure that people can take advantage of the same appreciation in their land values that Engliston does, that Cat Island does, has benefit from. Why shouldn't these people be able to acquire wealth through the same means? sit down, the community gets developed, the infrastructure is developed, you get better schools, you get free Wi-Fi, you get a thriving business community, and their property value comes up. Why shouldn't they be able to benefit that and create wealth for themselves through natural nutrition, natural organic means? Why should that be the exclusive domain for the suburbs and the more affluent areas? This is how people build equity
Honorable
and are able then
for
to
East
go.
Grand
She doesn't
Bahama.
have a point of order, Mr. Speaker, because I haven't said anything.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleston.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The member is alluding to speeches made on this side, and as you're aware, Mr. Speaker, because you know the rules better than all of us. Speaker, the rule speaks to where a portion of a member's speech has been misunderstood. And I think the member misunderstands. No one is objecting to values of land increasing to the benefit.
Honorable member, whose speech are you referring to?
My speech, Mr. Speaker.
Hon-
My speech. Yes,
Just a moment. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island.
I spoke I acknowledged in my speech, right, that there could be benefits and value in what they're doing. I acknowledge that, right? I acknowledge that. What our concern is that added value to any particular community does not particularly address the needs of the poor and the structural issues that impact upon poverty. Right? So, and the speaker, when I said values to property is how it impacted tenants. Right? Tenants will be moved, the rent will go up. That's what I'm concerned about.
Honorable member. Honorable member for East Grand Bahama, just a moment. Honorable member, I'm trying to make a... Honorable members, if a member on the floor is making a statement, he hasn't made any reference, direct or indirect, to any contribution being made. He's offering his position with respect to his contribution. He never identified anything that any member said. Honorable member, so it's the view of the chair that the point of order with respect to the member for East Grand Bahama statement is not well taken. It's not. That's the ruling. The point of order is not well taken.
Why I rose. Because the member spoke about what members on the side said. I could directly confirm that I said and spoke to those issues. So if I did speak to it, you don't have to identify me specifically. Anyone who heard what I had to say would know he's referring to me. That's why I could. Now, if it is that I could refer to what someone said, and that someone is not identified, and therefore no one could object to it, fine. I'm with that.
No,
I'm not quarreling with the ruling.
Yeah, what the chair is saying is simply that if a member is giving his views on what was said by another member in terms of whether he agrees with it or disagrees with it, that is not grounds for a point of order. Now, if he indicates, for example, that a particular member made a statement, and this is what I interpret this statement to mean, that's a different question altogether.
Therefore, if he interprets what a member says in a way that the member did not intend, then the member ought to have the opportunity to say to the assembly what, in fact, those words would have meant. That's
Yes.
what I'm saying.
Yes.
And so once the member, he don't have to identify who it is. But if I knew I said, I could go to my speech. I said property values.
But that is precisely the point I'm making. That it is the view of the chair that the member did not interpret what was said. He is giving his position on whether or not he agrees with what was said. The chair recognizes the honorable member for
Thank you, Mr.
East
Speaker. I
Grand
think
Bahama.
that absolutely clarifies the point. You know, the whole purpose of us having a debate is because we present alternative views. So they presented their view, and I'm presenting my view based upon what was said. Right? I'm not misrepresenting anything. Right? So anyway, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the whole idea of this, or one of the benefits of this project is that Bahamians who have been stuck in a situation may now be able to have equity accruing on their properties that now they can use to leverage to do other things. Including, there was a question by one of the members about, you know, how do people take advantage of this program? Well, as equity is built up in these assets, these people can use that equity and leverage it into resources that they can use either to improve their property or to get involved in some income-producing activity. That's what this is about, Mr. Speaker. This is about giving people an opportunity to improve their circumstance. You see, you don't always make money through a trading activity, you know. There's something called passive income, and there's this whole idea of organic wealth, where just by sitting down on a piece of property or some asset, it just increases in value. You've done nothing yourself, but because of circumstance, the values increase. And you, as a result, are wealthier. Okay? So, and then same, forgive me for this, but the same white people that they always complaining about, that's what they do. They grab a piece of land and they sit on it and wait for something to happen. That's what happens. I wasn't talking about you, Angliston. But Mr. Speaker, this is what it's about. It's about empowering people in these communities to be able to take care of their own circumstances rather than being dependent on people, on politicians, to always be handing out something. You know, Mr. Speaker, one of the most egregious things that I think we have done, and I use the word we, because I don't want anybody to jump up, is this 52-week job program. Because the 52-week job program has become the 104-week job program, the 156-week job program, and on and on. Because we've put people on these jobs with no guarantees, at minimum wage, with no real expectation or no real confirmation that they're going to have a career or they're going to have some future employment. And so these people go from pillar to post, trying to please whoever they have to please, including politicians, because they need their job. There's no real training component to it. And so at the end of 52 weeks, they come back to the politician, please, I need my job again, please, sir, please, whatever you need me to do. And if it's an election year, well, we all know what's going to have to happen, right? And so, you know, it's a dead-end job. You can't go to the bank, you can't get a car, you can't get a mortgage, you can't even send your children to school. That's no way to live. That's not empowering. And one of the things that we are doing in this current year is ensure that we give those kinds of people opportunities. And so when you talk about empowerment, empowerment is giving these people training opportunities. So we're spending, I think it's $2.6 million to provide scholarships to BTVI for these same people to go and get training, to get some skills.
Tangible.
You think about that.
Huh? Serious, man.
You know, and there's some people who have been on the 52-week job program that have done well.
Yeah.
They show up to work and they work hard.
Yeah.
Those people are being retained, and they will be hopefully transferred into the permanent and pensionable system, because they're distorting the civil service too, causing some problems. But those who did not perform,
Still helping them.
those who do not have any desire to be in those jobs that they've been in, they now have an option. They can now apply to be on this BTVI program and learn a skill. In other words, they have an exit ramp.
That's right.
So now, instead of just being slaving on some job that you get no benefits for and no security, you now can learn a skill that you can go and demand employment, or even better still, you can go out and create your own job. Think about that.
Solid.
You go to BTVI for 2 years, and the government is going to help you, you know, because we recognize that some people just can't say, I go into school, because they got children, they got whatever bills they got to pay. So the government is even going to give you some subvention to go, to learn.
Leadership.
The only thing we ask from you is to work hard. And when you finish that program, understand you're coming off the government payroll, because the government can't continue to carry you. And that's going to free up space for somebody else to come into the program. And this is an area where we need assistance. It's where we need this kind of program. Because there's a deficit of trade or technical skills in this country. But we keep trying to give people a fish, give them a couple of dollars, make them happy.
They don't give you,
Don't expect anything from the other side.
they don't give you a fish no more.
And so people become dependent. That's unacceptable. It is not empowering.
Nope.
It's unacceptable
That's what they have to
in
have.
this day. And so we're giving people an exit ramp where they're going to be able to find employment based upon skill, not based upon who they know,
Hand up, Rambo.
and be able to create employment in these same communities that we're talking about. You would know that we are going to launch the Small Business Development Center very soon. And the whole idea behind the Small Business Development Center is to take these same kinds of people already? But I ain't get on the roll yet. These same kind of people, yeah, give me my time back. These same kind of people, we're going to, when they come out of this program, we're going to put them in a mentorship program where they'll get the basics of business, where there'll be somebody who will help them develop their business plan, help them develop their financing plan, help them to source financing for their programs. We will give them micro loans so that they can go and buy the tools that they need in order to start their businesses. The government itself is setting aside 20% of its budget, its procurement budget, for these kinds of entities to ensure that they have a foundation from which to launch. And you're talking about we're not empowering these people? Again, you know, I can only say it's because you don't know. That's the only thing I can say. I heard some talk about the value-added tax, and I'm going to run out of time, so I'll just try to do this quick. I heard about the value-added tax and what the increase in value-added tax and what that is supposedly doing. And of course, I demonstrated yesterday that the comments that were made was absolutely incorrect. But be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the poor people, and I think this is important, by the member for Exuma,
We will hear you people.
but when it comes to the poor people in particular, and I think this is very important, is that when it comes to the bread basket, we're not increasing the cost on the poor or the vulnerable communities, including Baines and Grandstown. We're actually reducing the cost on these communities, Mr. Speaker, because their cost prior to the increase in the value-added tax was 7.5% on their bill, 7.5%. Well, guess what we've done? Come next week, August 1st, the 7.5% goes to zero.
You're talking sense.
They're saving 7.5%, Mr. Speaker. Right? Because before the change, they were paying 7.5% on the value-added tax on the bread basket.
Yeah.
Come Next week, August 1st, it'll be 0. Okay? Meaning they don't pay any value-added tax. Okay? Now, Mr. Speaker, now, let's talk about the other costs. So let's talk about the other costs, Mr. Speaker, because remember now who we're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about those who live on West Ridge. I'm not talking about those in Highland Park.
yeah.
And I'm not talking about those people out east and out west in all them rich places. Okay?
Then
Okay?
the time.
I'm talking about marginalized communities, vulnerable communities now. Like Engliston. So you got 0 value-added tax on breadbasket items. You have 0 value-added tax on electricity bills up to $200, Mr. Speaker.
My goodness.
You have 0 value-added tax on water bills, Mr. Speaker. Do you recognize that is a net savings to these poor people?
That's right.
Direct money in their pocket. You know, I did a calculation, Mr. Speaker. On electricity itself, it represents $189 in savings for a family a year, meaning you basically get 1 month light bill free. Mr. Speaker, on the bread basket,
Honorable member,
I'm going to wrap up.
your time has expired. I'll grant you 2 minutes to wrap
Thank you
up.
very much. On the bread basket alone, a calculation that I did on 3 items
Yeah.
is $189 a year, Mr. Speaker. And that just goes out on all the items. Okay? And that's just on the three components of this relief that we have given. And so there's no increase for the most vulnerable communities. There's actually a decrease. Absolutely a decrease in their cost. Right? And so, Mr. Speaker, and the benefits go on. And again, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to tell you. For businesses, the Prime Minister has spoken about it. There's all kinds of benefits in this legislation, as well as in the budget, for these communities. Listen, if you're living in this community, if you don't go out and do something for yourself,
Right.
I tell you, you're missing a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, he didn't
Don't listen to those people who have held you down for 45 years
get back a dollar.
and didn't do one thing to help you lift yourself up. Don't listen to them because they want to keep you dependent upon them.
That's not be that
Mr. Speaker,
We the free national.
read for yourself. Have somebody explain it to you.
Yeah.
We've had community meetings. Come out and support them. I have done them. The Prime Minister have done them. Come out. Hear for yourself. Question. Because I don't run from questions. Ask me the hard questions. And I'll tell you, there is tremendous savings in this budget, in this bill before us today, for the average man on the street in these communities.
Right.
All you have to do is reach out as we reached you.
Yeah.
And I assure you, you will benefit and you will see great reward from this budget and from this bill. So again, they ate up all my time at all the questions or the challenges. So I can't say all that I want to say, but I think that's enough for today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. As many? As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to thank my colleagues for wonderful presentation throughout the day and yesterday. It is quite obvious that the over the hill, the changes that we're making there is needed and be assured will be implemented. But Mr. Speaker, there were several quotes that had me disturbed for a while, and it's essential for me to formalize my debate around what was said. No, the FNM is no friend of the poor, and then government not for the people. They were very disturbing, and as I go through, I would refer to those quotes repeatedly from both the member for Exuma and the leader of the opposition. But Mr. Speaker, when I went home last night, I was thinking about why some of the members opposite were so angry and disingenuous about the FNM's record in empowering and lifting up the poor. It was very disturbing. They were angry and disingenuous because of our superior record. And they're angry, Mr. Speaker, because they are on the defense. And many people in the PLP who like to boast of their progressive credentials are paper progressives. People who talk the progressive talk and who do not walk the progressive walk.
Deal with it, deal with it.
The PLP, Mr. Speaker, are very, very, very worried about our over-the-hill revitalization program. I think they are politically scared that residents of the over-the-hill will see the stark difference between the PLP neglect and the hope and opportunity being ushered in by the FNM. In healthcare, Mr. Speaker, women's rights, social services, poverty alleviation, and infrastructural development, the FNM has a much more progressive record than the modern PLP. The former Minister of Education and former member for Fort Charlotte, Alfred Sayers, has spoken publicly of how the FNM is the more progressive party in the country. And Mr. Speaker, for 25 years, a quarter of a century, the PLP had numerous opportunities to introduce a minimum wage, a quarter of a century. But they shamelessly failed to do so. The member for Exuma, and I hope he's listening, the member for Exuma and Ragged Island seems to have amnesia. I know he's listening. He may not be sitting here, but he's listening. He seems to have amnesia because he says he can't think of much the FNM did to help poor Bahamians. Now, the only thing I'm going to say to that member is I want him to listen because he's in for a teaching today. He will learn what we did. So this is a teaching moment for that member. His education begins today. The minimum wage, Mr. Speaker, which the FNM introduced, helped scores of poor Bahamians. So I asked them, are we not friends of the poor? Are we not the government of the people? Why didn't the PLP introduce minimum wage? Their failure was a part of a pattern of neglect by the PLP, who abandoned the poor, but who were happy to ask poor Bahamians for their support. The FNM, Mr. Speaker, also reduced the work week from 48 hours to 40 hours.
My.
And many people would have forgotten about that. But, Mr. Speaker, the government-operated clinics are overwhelmingly used by lower-income Bahamians. During the 3 terms of the FNM, we built clinics across this country in order to better serve the health needs of the Bahamian people. But do you still believe that we are not the government for the people. That's a quote from the member for Cat Island. Do you still believe that we are no friend of the poor? Just compare this, Mr. Speaker, with the poor record of the two Christie administrations in terms of government-operated clinics. The government clinics serve thousands of Bahamians every year. We improved prenatal and neonatal care, and we built a new critical care block at the Princess Margaret Hospital. I asked Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador again, are we not for the people? And you still believe that we are no friends of the poor? Mr. Speaker, when the government came to office in 1992, many Family Island communities were without electricity and potable water, both of which are basic items. The PLP had 25 years to fully electrify the Family Islands, but they failed. Many of those affected by this failure and by no or poor access to potable water were lower-income Family Island residents. This is another example of the shameful neglect of the PLP for the poor in general and for the Family Islands. But yet, Exuma said, we don't care about the poor and the Family Islands. He reminded us that while growing up, he did not have light and water. I think if he were here today, he would thank us for introducing it for him now. So wherever you are, Exuma, I accept your thank you and your apology. Mr. Speaker, the Family Island. They say we are no friends of the poor. We are not. I wrote his quote down so I don't miss. We are not the government for the people. So let's give an example of what we have done and what we are about to do for the Family Island. And then they can answer their own question. There are two in Abaco. There's an office of the Prime Minister that was not utilized. Is now being utilized every month. Once per week, once per month, I spend time in the Abaco office, where I would meet residents of Abaco one-on-one, listen to their concern, have with me a member from the delivery unit to ensure that their concerns are addressed so that upon our return, we meet those individuals and follow through. That is building relationships with communities. That's what happens in Abaco. We also have an office in Grand Bahama that was never utilized, and the same occurs. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, I leave for Grand Bahama and would take a tour of the facilities in West End. But Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, we're opening an office in Exuma. And I've started meeting with the residents in the administrator's office, where again, I and a member of the delivery unit listen to their concerns. And I can assure Exuma that they will soon have a new airport. I see the need and the necessity of a new airport for Exuma.
Then, Mr. Speaker, we're opening an office in Andres. At present, because it's not being used, because we don't have such facility, we're utilizing the administrators. We're utilizing the administrators office. And again, with regularity, we sit, regardless to how long it may take, and we listen to the concerns of the Androsians. And we address their concerns, and we build relationships. They meet their Prime Minister and their Member of Parliament one-on-one. That's what we're doing in the Family Islands. Never before. But, Mr. Speaker, what we've also introduced, every time government officials, Prime Minister travels abroad, he spends the people's money, and he comes back to the nation and he reports on what has happened. So we use those opportunities to inform the Family Islands as to my travels, CARICOM, Commonwealth, and other travels, and bring them up to date so that they know how their monies are being spent and what was accomplished. That's direct communication. Never before has that happened in the Family Islands. So the Family Islands look forward to that. But now they can express their concerns after returning from CARICOM. I reported to them about what transpired, about what CSME is all about. I reassured them that there would be no free movement of people not within the Bahamas. They can move throughout the other Caribbean nations, but no members of CARICOM. The 21 million will not be able to move freely through this Bahamas. They knew and heard it firsthand. They were also informed firsthand of what we would do with respect to the marijuana or the ganja issue that was being discussed at CARICOM. They also were informed about the Commonwealth. This is new, never been done before. We also have an office, Mr. Speaker, establishing an office in North Eleuthera. And until such facilities is completed, we're utilizing the administrative complex. But again, the residents of those islands get to meet their Prime Minister and their Member of Parliament and other officials one-on-one, where we listen to their concerns. We're not running from them. And we tell them whether or not we can address certain issues and how long it would take. And you would be surprised of how happy they are to sit down one-on-one with their Member of Parliament and with their Prime Minister. But we also know that through our travels, we know many have complained about not having land, not being able to build their homes, and what's happening in the Family Islands with respect to the foreign residents building second homes, renting them out as hotel rooms, and basically taking over the economy. And we have assured them that we're introducing a commercial land bill where after we've completed our land audit, that is to commence very soon, we would then identify all of our government crown land throughout the Bahamas, those that are not being utilized for what they were intended to, and those that were, you don't like me to use such word, but those that were stolen or misappropriated would be brought back home and back into the government's coffer. I won't answer that yet. Let me finish. Let me finish. So, Mr. Speaker, you want me to go back to the 1800s?
That's an important question.
So, Mr. Speaker, we would identify which lands should be residential, which lands would be commercial. The commercial land, we would introduce proper facilities, light, water, etc., after which we would sell those commercial lands to the Bahamians at very, very rock bottom prices and allow them to build bed and breakfast hotels within the various family islands and throughout the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the member for Exuma said we don't like the family island, but this is what we're doing for them. We're empowering people, and they would be able to build their bed and breakfast hotels duty-free. Because the whole hotel industry today is changing. It's not the big Bahama and Atlantis. People are now building boutique hotels. So we'd make that available for them so that the foreign nationals don't take over our family islands and our room inventory over the next 10, 15 years. So we want to ensure that we control our destiny. So that's what we're doing. So, Mr. Speaker, many of those affected by this failure and by no or poor access to potable water were lower income family island residents. And this is another example of the shameful neglect of the PLP for the poor in general and the family islands. They have a sad record of neglect and abandonment of the poor. Yet they seek to lecture others about how much they love the poor. You couldn't be serious. But we have always known that the PLP have no shame. Mr. Speaker, an elderly lady, a resident of Grantstown all her life, who was in her early 80s when she passed away last year, told a story about her water supply. She said that when she put her bottle to the faucet to get water during the years the PLP was in office, she could go and do some chores and come back, and the bottle would be almost full. But she said that after the major waterworks program of the last F&M government, that water would gush. It would gush from her pipes, and that she now has good water supply. Well, that's what the inner city program is about. Rather than her go into the pump, we want to bring the water supply to our home. Respect. That's what the inner city program is about. When I spoke to the UN just recently, and I met with the Secretary General, that's what I spoke to the Secretary General about. Water being delivered to our homes, improving the quality of water, meeting the Sustainable Development Goal. We've also spoke with PAHO about bringing water to the homes of our people. And we said that we have a commitment to ensure that outdoor toilets and water would be resolved by the year 2025. So that's what we spoke about. The PLP talks, the progressive talk, Mr. Speaker, but it's the F&M that has the superior record of lifting up and empowering the poor. I also note that as a part of our major roadworks and infrastructure plan to modernize New Providence, we put in drainage, sidewalks, and street lighting in some of the more blighted over-the-hill communities. Mr. Speaker, the government operated schools service most students in the country, including lower income Bahamians. During the F&M first 3 terms in office, we built and refurbished a number of schools across the country. We significantly expanded the number of classrooms, but yet they say we are not the government for the people. Yet in 2 terms in office, a period of 10 years, listen to me carefully, Cat Island, because you were like a popcorn when Cardinal was speaking. So listen to me carefully. I wrote these words very carefully. Yet in 2 terms in office, a period of 10 years, the Christie administration failed to complete the construction of a single school. Careful with my words. Failed to complete the construction of a single school. The member for Angliston sat in both of these cabinets. Mr. Speaker, in this administration, the Ministry of Education is addressing the national skills deficit and the critical need to improve substandard literacy, numeracy, and communication skills. Recognizing that staff skills and competencies have a direct correlation with educational results, the Ministry of Education has embarked on the mandatory training and professional development exercise of its entire staff complement. The ministry has also refocused on a specific goal to increase the graduation rate. But yet, you say we're a government, not for the people. Have you changed your mind yet? My government, Mr. Speaker, has been working to enhance education via technology and experience-based learning. The government has launched the e-learning pilot program in 11 schools throughout the archipelago. But yet, we are not the government for the people. And we are no friends of the poor, and the educational gap is increasing. You still believe those? Mr. Speaker, the goal of this initiative is to modernize the way Bahamian youth are educated using tablets for interactive learning and using software that allows parents and teachers to better monitor and track a child's performance. The government has also begun to address the infrastructural deficit that is faced in certain areas of the country. We have begun in the southwest area of New Providence with the finalization of a commitment to construct a new primary school. The government is readying a major construction and upgrade program for the public school system, which will better enable learning. Mr. Speaker, it is clear, it is quite clear, it is obvious to all, and even to the opposition, though they live in denial, it is clear that the F&M is the party of progress and equality. The F&M dismantled sexist policies which the PLP maintained for a quarter of a century. Allow me to repeat, so you can send your text messages to check. The F&M dismantled sexist policies which the PLP maintained for a quarter of a century. The F&M mandated that female and male officers in the public service be treated equally and regardless of marital status. It is the F&M which ended that practice whereby male public officers were routinely promoted over women and winning higher salaries because they were invariably seen as the principal breadwinner. The FNM abolished the dower and made surviving spouses, regardless of gender, heir to the matrimonial home. And we still don't like people, eh? The FNM abolished, now I have to be careful, you know, these legal words. The FNM abolished primogeniture. Now, let me explain what that means. Let me explain that. And let me put that in simple terms. I ain't talking to y'all right now. Let me talk to those outside. What that means is that in the past, everything went to the firstborn, male, to the male firstborn. So, man has 7 children. The male firstborn got everything. Those behind, bye-bye, nothing. Treated, they got nothing. We changed the law, so equality for all. The male firstborn don't take control anymore. Everybody gets their share. All right? Now I put that in simple language. Mr. Speaker, in notes he made to address the House of Assembly when he was demitting office, the former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram noted some of the accomplishments of the FNM in terms of caring for the poor. He noted, and I quote, "We enhanced and increased social welfare programs for the neediest in our society, including widows and orphans, and increased both contributory and non-contributory old age pensions." He went on to say, "We increased NIB benefits payments for maternity, sickness, industrial injury, and funeral benefits. And we put in place regulations requiring automatic periodic adjustments to NIB benefits payments." He also noted, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "We demolished a number of shanty towns developed without authorization on Crown and government-owned land around New Providence and replaced them with affordable built houses for Bahamians." Before I continue with former Prime Minister Ingram's quote, I just want to divert for a second. While walking outside, a member of the press asked me that a high official of the Haitian community, so I'm going to answer a question now. A high official of the Haitian community asked whether we would do for the shanty towns or the Haitian communities what we are doing for the inner city. And I said to her, not a possible chance. So that answers her question. I had to stick on the highway with direct English language without diverting where I may have wanted to go. But I stayed on I-95. What we want to do with those shanty towns is develop, put proper infra. No, I'm staying on the highway. Well, I'm staying on Koenig-Darling Highway. But I won't come on, I refuse to exit. Because you know if I exit, then, yeah, all right. But what we want to do with those shanty towns, the lands that are government, we want to put the proper infrastructure in, lights, water, etc., and sell those lands, create subdivisions, and sell those lands at rock bottom prices to Bahamians and allow them to build within those subdivisions, duty-free, and build proper homes meeting all the standards that are in place. So to answer that reporter again, the answer is absolutely no. Thousands more Bahamians became homeowners for the first time, facilitated, this is from quote from Ingram again. Thousands more Bahamians became homeowners for the first time, facilitated by the economic expansion which our policies made possible. The former member of Parliament for North Abaco also noted, I quote, "We established urban redevelopment of inner city communities, replacing dilapidated structures, creating rebirth communities, and instituting community policing in Over the Hill and other disadvantaged communities around New Providence. We extensively upgraded our public education infrastructure, including the repair, upgrade, and expansion of existing schools, the construction of 13 new primary and high schools, and we constructed the first new public libraries put into use into 26 years at Carmichael Road, East Street South, and Elizabeth Estate. He also went on to say, Mr. Speaker, we introduced preschool places for 4-year-olds and constructed the first early childhood education center at East Street South. We amended the Education Act, raising the school leaving age from 14 to 16, and we computerized the government-operated school system. You still believe we, quote, government not for the people? The former Prime Minister also noted, we instituted free prenatal care for pregnant women in all public hospitals and clinics and improved the delivery of public health services. We introduced free antiviral treatment for HIV-positive pregnant women and subsequently extended it to all HIV-infected individuals. Mr. Speaker, end quote. Mr. Speaker, in one of our publications, the FNM noted 2 other accomplishments to empower more Bahamians. We created 5,500 jobs and training opportunities through the Temporary Employment Program, the National Job Skills Training Initiatives, and the Job Readiness and Training Programs. We launched the landmark National Retraining Program, which has benefited over 4,000 Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, I wish to share with the House a brief outlook of the Bahamas economy. Based on IMF estimates, the Bahamian economy is expected to grow by 2.5% in 2018, supported by the completion of the Bahama Resort and a stronger U.S. economy. That's important, Mr. Speaker, because in 2013, you'll have your time to talk. In 2013, the economy shrunk minus 0.6%. 2014, minus 1.2%. 2015, minus 3.1%. 16.2%. And 2017, under FNM, we grew by 1.4%, and it's anticipated to grow 2.5% this year. Recent economic indicators confirm this positive and improved momentum. In particular, preliminary tourism indicators have strengthened, with visitor arrivals for the 5 months up by 12.7% compared to a 3.4% contraction in the comparable period of 2017. The outcome benefited from a recovered 12.2% growth in the dominant U.S. market segment, following an earlier 4.1% decline, and supported by more robust growth in the non-U.S. segment of 15.6%, up from a year earlier 0.8%. Hotel bookings are up, and so the average daily room rate are also up. Construction sector activity continued to be supported by healthy foreign direct investment flows. I am also advised that initiatives such as the Over-the-Hill Revitalization Project may reinforce the contribution of private sector activity to medium-term economic growth. Mr. Speaker, Cat Island, you are a religious man, so I need you to listen carefully. Listen to this carefully. One of my favorite scriptures is found in Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 through 40. And I quote, "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothed you? And when did we see you sick or in a prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me." Mr. Speaker, this best describes our mission. We are putting in the legal framework to achieve, listen, we are putting in the legal framework to achieve these goals. Mr. Speaker, I am on record as saying that if I can help somebody as I pass this way, then my living will not be in vain. The Bahamian people elected us for this time and season, and they expect us to deliver for them. And this is what we are doing.
Preach. You didn't expect that. Don't set them up for that.
This is what we are doing.
I want to hear this. Don't be distracted.
We will not flinch in our quest to do for them what we were elected to do. As I travel through New Providence and our family islands, I am encouraged. I am encouraged, as many Bahamians tell me, to stay the course. We will do for them what others often talked about. You heard me? Listen to me. I am encouraged, as many Bahamians tell me, to stay the course. We will do for them what others often talked about. Action versus no action. We will come through for them, Mr. Speaker. We will not let them down. This piece of legislation will enable us to leave the over-the-hill communities far better than we meet them. We met them.
Yes, sir.
Though others seek to criticize and discourage us, we will not be discouraged. And we're pressing on. On the upward way. New heights. New heights. We're gaining every day.
Watch it now.
Another preacher.
Let me say for Vaughan, as we're pressing on the upward way, new heights, we're gaining every day. Mr. Speaker,
You got brave leaning on that one.
I wish to reiterate that the Economic Empowerment Zone will enhance and further the socio-economic development within the inner city communities.
Yeah.
It is anticipated that this piece of transformative and innovative legislation will set the stage for improved quality of lives of residents in the over-the-hill community. The suite of targeted initiatives will give hope and provide opportunity to our people. Our people don't want handouts. They want a helping hand.
Yes, yes, yes.
Our people don't want pity. They want purpose. Mr. Speaker, I speak often about the common good. The common good means that every person in a society has human dignity, and that we must promote the good of all while paying special attention to the needs and aspirations of the poor. The common good means providing those things essential for leading a life of dignity. These include health care, education and training, access to work and opportunity, housing, safety and security, a health environment, the preservation of one's culture, and other things that enrich individuals, communities, and the nation. While the PLP has a legacy of caring for their own private and personal good, our commitment, my commitment and mission is to the common good. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, will help to improve the lives of scores of Bahamians and will improve the common good of our Commonwealth. Before I close, Mr. Speaker, the member for South Andros, during his debate, had said that I visited many family islands,
You know you can't speak.
and I did not.
Honorable members,
The member for South Andros, during his debate, said that I had visited many family islands and I did not entertain any question. Let me answer you. I said to them, even before I spoke, that I want to hear their concerns personally, because there are some things you would not want to publicize, but I would listen to you personally. Regardless to how long it takes, I will listen and answer your question. And at each event, after it was completed, I waited. Many of them lined up, etc. And I listened to their concern and their questions one-on-one. I answered, and what I could not answer, I said, I will return.
And get back.
And during the next 3 years, well, I should say during the next 8.5 years. During the next 8.5 years,
It could be a while.
during the next 8.5 years, I will cyclically move from island to island straight through until my retirement 8.5 years from today. So I will continue to talk to the people. I will continue to listen to their concerns. And by the time I'm finished, my term, 8.5 years from the day, I will know almost every Bahamian throughout the length and breadth of this Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I rest my case.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to promote the redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected thereto. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to promote the redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in a designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected thereto.
For the second reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more second readings, but we do have the concurrence of the opposition. We would like to just move back on the agenda to first reading because the government has two bills that we need to lay on the table of this House before the summer recess. So with the indulgence of the chair and the concurrence of the other side, I do move that the House does move back on the agenda to first reading. And then, Mr. Speaker, we'll move forward. We'll go into committee of the whole and then we'll seek to pass it.
There's no objection. First reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to give thanks to Almighty God. I want to give thanks to Almighty God for giving me the opportunity to be here. I can lay the bill. You don't want me to thank God when I lay in the bill?
Go ahead and thank God.
I thank God, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the objection, for being here. I also thank the good people of Southern Shores for being here. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas is strategically placed geographically As a result of our geographical location, Mr. Speaker, we have been blessed with the opportunity to feed ourselves from our waters. We've been blessed, Mr. Speaker, with the opportunity for our citizenry to make a living as a result of our tourism product, as a result of our maritime industry. With that, Mr. Speaker, comes a degree of responsibility to ensure safety and security of all of those who work in, feed from, and play within these waters of the Bahamas. You would note, Mr. Speaker, that there has been recent incidents and accidents that would have necessitated or would have resulted in public discussion calling for various legislative amendments, calling for various aspects of security and safety. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure this House and the Bahamian public that my standing here is by no means a knee-jerk reaction. The honorable member for Angliston would have served as the member of transport some time back and would have had an appreciation for these very same needs and would have sometime in 2016 attempted to rectify some of these issues. My information is that a bill was laid but never debated. It died. Of course, the elections happened and the rest is history. Governments are continuous, Mr. Speaker, and so while I served as the Minister of Transport and Local Government, we looked at and reviewed and ensured that all of the bases were covered and all the stakeholders would have been consulted, and we're satisfied that those needs still exist. And I went back as far as 2016, A, to acknowledge the work of the former minister, and B, to make the point that this is no knee-jerk reaction to recent incidents. And so with that said, Mr. Speaker, and in the interest of time, I wish to table two bills, the first being the Water Skiing and Motorboat Control Amendment Bill 2018. The objective of this bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to provide certain definitions as to who is responsible to, who is authorized to do certain things, and also seeks to increase certain fines to make sure that there is teeth to the law. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the Commercial Recreation and Watercraft Amendment Bill.
Honorable member.
One at a time.
Okay.
Okay.
The first one. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for first time. A bill for an act to amend the Water Skiing and Motor Boat Control Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Water Skiing and Motorboat Control Act.
For the first reading of bills, Chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, in the same context and spirit, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Commercial Recreational Watercraft Amendment Bill 2018.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Recreational Watercraft Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Recreational Watercraft Act.
Further, first reading of bills.
For the first readings.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Second reading and committal of bills.
Speaker, there are no more second readings, and I do now move at this point that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
I second that, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the whole House in the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House will now resolve itself into the Committee of the whole House with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the whole House in the chair. No, I don't. Yes.
Committee of the Whole. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Chairman, I do move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's being moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do move that the short title and commencement be agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's being moved and seconded that the short title and commencement of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title and commencement of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 through 15 be agreed.
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 2 through 15 of the bill be agreed. As many members, Chair recognizes the member for Exuma. The Chair recognizes the member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish to draw attention to, this was alluded to by yourself. Specifically, I had some comments to make when my time ran out. If you look at clause 6, 7, that deals with the appeal process. That deals with the appeals process. Section 7, and you have to take this under advisement. But there's never an appeal to the Governor General. Even if you appeal to the Governor General, it has what they call acting on the advice of
An anchoring
technical agency. So, for example, in the police, I think it's the police that speaks to you being able to appeal to the Governor General, who will act in accordance with the advice of the Police Commission, the Public Service Commission. So this is really has to be looked at. And so that would be, and then you have to look at it in the context of it. And then again, the act, there are two ministers that are identified. The Minister of Finance is responsible for that. So, and then it has this statement, if not the Minister of Finance. So the question is whether the Minister of Finance will also have the portfolio, or whether that's keep it separate always. You will have as it were, sees the, appealing to see. So I brought that to the attention of a matter. It may be dealt with up and then come back.
It's been moved and seconded. The chair recognizes the member for Angliston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering, and I'd raised this in my debate, and I don't think anyone touched on it, and I'd like to know what is the specific intent of the government, and if they can, if the intent is as the bill appears, what is anticipated as to the impact of this. I look at section or clause 6, which speaks about consideration and approval of an application. And it speaks to where it's situated in the zone in question, does not fall within a prohibited commercial activity as listed in the 3rd schedule, and that's gaming and alcohol. Right. C, will have a beneficial effect upon the economy of the zone. The minister shall grant approval. And I am concerned about whether this, because we are talking, I think the bill seeks to empower or to incentivize people in the community and Bahamians at large. And this seems to leave open the possibility that non-Bahamians will be able to take advantage of these incredibly generous concessions. And I'm wondering whether that is the intent, if that is incorporated into the vision of this bill. And if it is, I'm just wondering what controls will be on that, because you're talking about exemption on stamp duty, which is 10% for over 100,000, which is a very generous concession. In fact, personally, I think that the duty on land is too high. I think it's an inhibitor to movement, to the sale of land, but that's just a personal view. I think we have to look at that. But I'm concerned that people with resources and wealth who are not Bahamians will be able to go into this zone area and capitalize on these concessions. And I'm wondering if you can advise the policy of this legislation.
Chair recognizes the member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Yeah.
That matter had been arisen, had arise, and we were looking at Bahamians and residents with the right to work, because the resident right to work has basically all the benefits as a Bahamian also, other than voting. Yes, permanent residents, yes.
So, okay. But I believe that it's still the International Persons Landholding Act will apply for those persons, because they have to, permanent residents have to apply for permission, I believe. And then the other thing I want to ask is, and so, okay, so that's anticipated that non-Bahamians will be able to participate in this zone. Yes, non-Bahamians. Because a permanent resident, the right to work, could be an expatriate who's from Europe, who's been in the banking industry for a long time. Yes, yeah, sometimes that happens. I'm just saying, we have to, this is a very broad category, and so I'm raising it because I think we have to be cognizant of the implications, and I want to cause the government to think about it carefully, because it could, you might find yourself locked into a situation that could cause instability in a community or in the country at large. And the other thing I want to ask is, I know there are regulations. If we could be advised when those regulations will come. And I'd just like to say, I think we were somewhat handicapped in this debate by not having the regulations, because the regulations might have done away with some of the questions we had, number one. And secondly, it would have helped us to understand what is anticipated in this regime. But, and so I want to ask, when will the regulations be laid? And then the other point I want to raise is, the quantification. The bill speaks in a very general way of this thing called corporate social responsibility, and the fact that they must have a statement. And I don't think the bill says that the statement, it might say, but I can't remember, that it must manifest. It says they must have a statement. But I'm assuming the government, it means have a statement and make it manifest. What I'm asking is, how is the government going to, is there a formula, are you thinking about a formula to quantify the expression of that corporate responsibility? Because really a corporate citizen could say, I clean the garbage through my corner, through that corner. So, but they got exemptions on customs, stamp duty, all kinds of things. And so, which is thousands, it could be potentially thousands and thousands of dollars. So what I want to know is there going to be a scale of what's required? Or is it going to be a discretionary thing for the Minister of Finance? He tells this one, in this particular case, you could do this. He tells another one, you could do another thing. And then, PM, you spoke to the monitoring, but I'm wondering, well, I think you spoke to that, but that's a concern, the monitoring. So the two questions are, one, when will we see the regulations? And secondly, what is anticipated in terms of quantifying to ensure parity and value for concession, relatively speaking, based on how you intend to do it?
Chair recognizes the member for Kalani.
Thank you very much. They're valid concerns. Regulations are being worked on. I could not give you a definite date at this particular time. So what I can say, you've raised valid questions, and those are matters that will be dealt with at the regulation.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 2 through 15 of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 2 through 15 of the bill is agreed.
Chairman, I now move that the first schedule be agreed. Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the first schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The first schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the second schedule of the bill be agreed. Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the second schedule of the bill be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for Angliston.
Thank you very much. I know what is intended. I'm just asking. When you say gaming, I believe you mean gambling, right? But you don't mean the game houses for children where you can go in and play. No. I asked that because it's not defined, and that's why I'm asking. What do you mean by gaming? Okay.
I understand that, but gaming meant what do you do? You buy numbers, you know, I don't gamble. I don't know those things. But gambling.
No, I know that's what you mean, but I'm just saying that it's not defined in the bill. The bill has definitions, but it doesn't define gaming. And gaming isn't necessarily a term of art to mean gambling solely. And so I just want to raise that concern that, so you know.
Chair recognizes the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
It just occurred to me that I had some comments on the Part A of the second schedule.
We're in the second schedule.
Huh?
Yes. You can speak to Cat Island.
Yeah, customs duties. If you look at customs duties, I think you want to exemptions from customs duties. I think the word exemption may be have been left out. Exemption from the payment of real property taxes. Then customs duty exemption from customs duty. That may have been left out. Exemption. Is that being consistent? No, it's not heading. That's correct. If you look at it, you don't have the bill ahead in front of you. You have it. Yeah. And then I think, yeah. And the next one is VAT is not payable anymore on real estate transactions, right? No. Yeah. So that will need to be put in that as well. Page 11, second schedule. Okay, so first of all, A. If you look at you have exemption from the payment of real property tax, customs duty, exemption from customs duty, and then, and then you delete with the exception of VAT because VAT is not payable any further, delete the words with the exception of that. Yeah, delete those words. And then add in customs duty exemption from. So that would be correct.
Raj. It's been moved. It's been. Kalani, you're. One second, English. Kalani, sorry, are you? Yeah. The chair recognizes the member for Angleston.
Thank you. One other point I want to make, PM, is that bearing in mind that stamp duty is now exempt on land, I want to raise a concern, or I don't, there's nothing in the bill that speaks to it, but I guess it's a concern is the right word, that we have to be very sensitive to people who may be engaging in, what do they call it when you speculation, buying up and buying up and buying up through different names, whatever, third, but whatever, and this could be a windfall for someone of that, and we have to be very, very sensitive, because the land purchase and sale is not tied to anything. It's not tied to a business development or anything of that nature, and so I'm very concerned that that could end up backfiring in a very major way. So I just want to raise that concern.
It's been moved and seconded that the second schedule of the bill be agreed as it's amended. Yes. Just want to make sure. I thought you were going to say something. Oh. It's being moved and seconded that the second schedule of the bill be agreed as amended. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The second schedule of the bill is agreed as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the third schedule be agreed.
Mr. Chair, I second that.
It's being moved and seconded that the third schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The chair recognizes the member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador.
Clarification. Sale of alcohol, where this is the primary activity. You know, a restaurant and bars, that's a liquor store. Let me say it clear. All right. If I have a restaurant and bar, restaurant is my, okay.
If you're a bar and restaurant, what are you?
Well, people usually go to the restaurant just to drink, you know.
It's been moved and seconded that the third schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The third schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the bill in its entirety be agreed. That the bill in its entirety as amended be agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety as amended be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Bill in its entirety as amended is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the Speaker takes the chair.
Second that, Mr. Chair.
Being moved and seconded that the Speaker take the chair. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The Speaker will now take the chair. Beg leave to report that the committee, the whole, has met and agreed to the bill with amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House has reported that the Committee of the Whole House has gone through the bill, having made amendments thereto. third reading and passing of bills.
Mr.
The
Speaker,
chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to promote the redevelopment of the communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in a designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected thereto.
Mr. Speaker, I second that.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. A bill for an act to promote the redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in designated economic empowerment zone for matters connected thereto. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a third time and passed.
Act to promote the redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in a designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected thereto.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be designated to be the Economic Empowerment Zone Act 2018. For the third reading and passing of bills, Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more third readings.
Consideration of Senate amendments. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move for the House to adopt the Senate amendments for the anti-terrorism and for the traveler's currency.
Honorable members, I have in my possession for consideration by this honorable House two amendments from the Senate. The first being the Traveler's Currency Declaration Bill 2018. Honorable members, no objections. We can proceed. Message. Pardon? Message number 7 from the Senate. Message to the Honorable Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly from the Honorable President and Honorable members of the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have passed the following bill, accompanying message number 7, dated the 24th of January 2018, from the Honorable House of Assembly, having made the following amendment. And this is for the travelers Currency Declaration Bill 2018. Clause 5 of the bill, the amendment is the renumbering of Clause 5 as Clause 6. And the second amendment, Clause 6, to be renumbered as Clause 7. Those are the two amendments to the Travelers Currency Declaration Bill 2018.
Mr.
The
Speaker, I
chair
do move
recognizes the honorable
that-
member for Bambutown.
Mr. Speaker, I do move at this time that the House adopts the amendment from the Senate.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that this honorable House adopts the amendments of the Senate to the Travelers Currency Declaration Bill 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The amendments are adopted. The second amendment from the Senate is number 14, and it's for the Anti-Terrorism Bill 2018. Message to the Honorable Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly from the Honorable President and Honorable members of the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have passed the following bill accompanying message number 13, dated the 27th of June 2018, from the Honorable House of Assembly, having made the following amendments. Clause 5, amendments to be made. Clause 5, subsection A, renumber subclause 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as subclauses 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, respectively. Subsection B, in the newly renumbered subclause 7, delete the words subsection 7 and substitute the words subsection 6. Clause 5, subsection C, in the newly renumbered subclause 8, delete the words subsection 7 and substitute the words subsection 6. Clause 7, subsection A, delete subclause 5. Clause 7, subsection B, renumber existing subclauses 6 as the new subclause 5. Clause 14, in subclause 2, insert the words persons or before the word terrorists where it first appears. Clause 28. In subclause 1, delete the chapeau, that's the French word. I hope I pronounced that properly. And substitute as follows. Subclause 1, a person who unlawfully and intentionally delivers, places, discharges, or detonates an explosive or other lethal device into or against a place of public use, a state facility, a government means of public transport, facility, a public transportation system, or an infrastructure facility. In clause 29, in subsection A, subclause 3, subsection A, insert immediately after the words accommodation of the word and. In 29, subclause B, subclause 5, delete figures, subclause 5, and substitute figures, subclause 4. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island.
chair will be done. I think
Mike.
I think it ought to be done by the slip rule, but the conversation between the should be sub-clause 6. There's sub-clause 5, that should be sub-clause, but there's no figure 5. Sub-clause 5. I point out. And if you want to see it, confirm the CNI. That should be 5.
You are 20, Honorable Member for Cat Island, just so that I would be clear,
Yeah.
you're clause 29, subclause B, and you're suggesting that subclause 5,
Subclause 5, when you read it,
yes.
has no reference to 5.
Oh, okay.
So the subclause 6 is the clause that has clause 6. So we spoke about it, so when it's typically when we share the subject, it should be subclause 6 for each figure 5.
Okay. So, Honorable Member for Cat Island, your suggestion is that in 29, subclause B, subclause 5 should be renumbered subclause 6.
If you look at subclause 5, you don't see a 5. Yeah, after you go to 6, you see a 5. Yeah, if you agree with that point, that
Okay, so let me just read that for the record. Clause 29, subclause B, subclause 6, delete the figures, subclause sub 5, and substitute the figures, subclause 4. Thank you. Clause 45, subclause A, and this French word again, in the chapel of subclause 3, delete the words under subsection 1 in respect of, and substitute the words in respect of an individual or entity referred to in subsection 1. Clause 45, subclause B, in subclause 8, delete the words subject to section 52 and substitute the word "and." In subclause 9, insert immediately after the word prescribed the words pursuant to subsection 8. In clause 45, subclause C, D? No, I haven't read C yet. 45, subclause C, in subclause 9, insert immediately after the word prescribed the words pursuant to subsection 8. In 45, subclause D, in subclause 13B, delete the word "in" where it first appears. In 45, subclause E, delete subclause 20, and in 45, subclause F, renumber subclause 21 as subclause 20. In clause 49, delete the chapel and subclause chapel 2 subclause 1 and substitute the following. Subclause 1, where a financial institution knows or has reasonable grounds to suspect that any funds maintained on its books by any individual, entity, or legal entity belongs to an individual entity or legal entity who Clause 56. Insert immediately after subclause 4 the following new subclause 5. Subclause 5, the new subclause 5. For the purposes of this section, transfer of detained persons includes the surrender of detained persons under Section 74. In Clause 76, in paragraph C, insert immediately after the word investigations the word or. And finally, in the schedule, delete the figure 79 appearing immediately under the schedule heading and substitute the figure 77.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the Senate amendments on the Anti-Terrorism Act be adopted by the House.
Is there a second now? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate amendments on the Anti-Terrorism Bill 2018 be adopted. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The Senate amendments on the Anti-Terrorism Bill 2018 are hereby adopted. Resolutions. Member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I want to raise 2 points. The first is one I raised in my substantive contribution, and it's the issue of, and I see the minister is here now, and I want to bring it to his attention, the issue of what is happening in the social services at this moment. I'm told from my constituents.
Honorable member, are you
Speaker,
going behind the ruling of the chair?
No, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking on member statements.
Yes, you are speaking on member
Would
statement.
you allow me to complete my sentence, Mr. Speaker? I would appreciate
I'm
it.
asking.
No, I'm not, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying to speak in the Parliament on behalf of the people of Angliston. I'm not going behind your ruling.
Carry on, honorable
Thank
member.
you. I really appreciate it, and people of Angliston appreciate it. What is happening is the cards expired for many in February. I would have communicated with you while you were away. And we're now in July. And what I'm advised is that when people go there, they say the card is not ready, but they're also being told they cannot receive assistance. I just want to raise the specter of that because that is a very serious issue, because once you have the card, by and large, you have qualified for assistance. And the second, and in that category, I can tell you, people impacted have been the elderly and the disabled. I know one of the members of the disabled community got assistance today, and I'm very grateful to the department. But I believe it may be a policy position, and I just want to raise it. The other point that has come to my attention is that there is a system in place where you go to social services, they give you a blue card, you go to labor, and labor stamps the card, and when you go back in a month's time for assistance, you will not get assistance unless you have shown or demonstrated that you've gone to labor to seek employment. I'm told that that now has gone from 4 weeks to 6 to 7 weeks, which means that instead of monthly assistance, people have to wait almost 2 months to get assistance. So I want to bring those issues to your attention because it's very serious. The Prime Minister spoke at length about the plight of the poor, and people who are on social assistance are the most vulnerable in our country. And so I was wondering if you would have a look at that. The second issue I want to raise there is that there are a lot of straw vendors in my constituency, and they've raised some concerns to me about their plight. This is not you, I don't know who, oh, that's the Minister of Works. But they have some concerns that what is happening is that they're saying that because of the levels of the rent and the amount of business that's coming in, or the diminished levels of business coming in, it's proving to be a global challenge in the straw market in meeting rent. And so they're asking for the government to look to the issue of rents in the straw market with a view to bringing some amelioration, if preferably in the reduction for the time being as to what, for those during this period. Secondly, they're asking that the rules, my constituents who work in the straw market, that the rules be repealed and reviewed to be more responsive to the new conditions and circumstances that are happening. Also, they're asking, there is a policy in place, I'm told, that you have to bring your arrears down to $200. That's not a problem. But what is happening is, I'm told from my people, that they come down to below the $200, but they're not allowed to open their stall. It's almost penal. And I am not used to seeing a penal system, because if your light is off and you go and pay your light is reinstated, but not in the straw market. You pay what is due or what they've asked for, and they make you wait 24 hours. So if you have 5 ships in, you can't open your stall. And the next day you might have no ship. And I think that is not consistent with business practices, number one. And number two, it's very penal. And I want to ask the government to address that issue. I'm told the roll-down doors are not working. The lights are not working. The place is very dark. Most of the lights are out. It's dark. The ventilation is poor. And I'm told that the opening and closing hours are not consistent. It's almost arbitrary, and that the vendors have to just fall in line. I'm told that the bathrooms are in a deplorable condition, and that at the disciplinary hearings, that people are not given the opportunity to have their representation at those hearings, and it's a one-dimensional, one-sided discussion. And also that they're asking, my constituents are asking, they're saying that because the business is just not there and they're not able to pay the rent and it has a domino effect on everything, they're asking the government to look to promotion of the straw market, just as they do for the hotels, the foreign hotels. They're asking that the government assist the straw vendors in promoting their product, and signage, just little things, signage near the Prince George dock and coming along, etc., that would assist them in their plight. The Prime Minister spoke at length today about the poor amongst us, or those who are at the more, well, let me put it this way, the straw vendors are smaller business persons. They're small business persons. And we cannot be seen to be penalizing or having oppressive policies for this grouping when they see in our country that the policies are different for other groupings. And so I want to make a plea on behalf of my constituents to say that if I'm asking the government to look to the issue of the dilemma of the straw market. They have a strong place in our history, and they have educated so many people. I believe we probably got a couple in here right now who descend or come from straw vendors. And so I'm asking that the government look to these issues. I spoke to the Minister of Works yesterday, and I promised to call him today, which I will do that hopefully tomorrow. But I wanted, because it does not only involve him, it's in tourism, it may be a finance issue, I'm asking the government to look favorably on these small entrepreneurs who have built this country and to seek to redress their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I wish to respond to the honourable member for Angliston as it relates to concerns of the card at the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development. I want to thank the member for bringing the matter to my attention. I would have heard the matter, and prior to that, in my orientation, Minister would appreciate that I'm new, but in my orientation, I would have asked questions that caused me to instruct that a meeting be held with the Bank of the Bahamas to clarify the position of the issue of the card. My information is that the cards expired in the month of March and April. The cards were issued for 3 years. On the expiration of the card, there was a reassessment of the individuals in question that took some time, but in addition to that, there was an attempt to issue the cards in block. That caused a delay because not every center would have been ready for all to be issued at one time. I'm informed, though, that in the interim, the understanding was that vouchers would have been issued to persons who, after the reassessment, continue to qualify for the assistance. Not all, I understand that. I'm advised now that they have since this week commenced the reissuing of the cards while the reassessment continued. I also want to invite the minister, because I spoke with the director, Ms. Quant, and I tried to establish a protocol or a line of communication. There may be some intimidation or some uneasiness if a minister calls and speaks with the receptionist or speaks with one of the line staff. So I've invited Ms. Quant to open her lines to receive any such complaints and concerns from the minister or any other member of parliament who has any such concerns. We would appreciate that there is a degree of privacy, confidentiality concerns, so we won't want to be calling names or specific cases in this place. But the protocol is now established, Honorable Minister, Honorable Member, that you can go directly, speak directly with Ms. Quant, and she would seek to assist wherever we can. I'm open for any other such concerns that you may have.
Thank the minister, because when a member raises a concern about their constituents, it's not a hostile act, and not on my part. And so I appreciate the response and the nature of the response. I thank you.
Let me see if I can.
The chair recognizes
Let
the
me just see
honorable member for
if I can continue the love fest.
East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just in respect to the straw market, this is an issue that is not new. There's always three sides to the story, and the truth gets mixed up somewhere in between. However, having said that, the minister has indicated that he is aware of the issues at the straw market, and those are being addressed, including the lighting issues, the cleanliness issues, the rent issues, all of that is being addressed. So we should see some resolution to that in very short order. And as we are going on break, Mr. Speaker, I do want to invite members of the East End community to attend the Wall of Fame unveiling tomorrow. No, sorry, Saturday at 9:30 a.m. And also tomorrow evening, the Prime Minister will be in town, and to invite all to attend the F&M headquarters to hear him with respect to his talk about the Grand Bahama economy. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, in my 1 minute allocated, I would like to thank all of those constituents and well-meaning persons who are part of the community of South Central and Mangrove Key, who are conducting the various Bible camps, summer camps, and also as we get set for back to school, I would like to say thanks to my administrators during the summer period who worked so hard during the year. And also thanks to the member for East Grand Bahama, who's been most cooperative. You know, sometimes it gets a little tight, for assisting the community. Our community is very challenged. I want to thank him publicly. And also I want to say thanks also to the member for Southern Shores, and the way he answered my colleague just now, that is a sign of maturity. Very good sign. I know there were many, I've been here a little while, I've listened to some commentary across the floor. The minority would have its say, but the majority would have its way. And I've noted those concerns. Also, Mr. Speaker, I note the fact that tomorrow is the funeral for the late Mr. Basil Sands, 10 o'clock at Christchurch Cathedral. We want to send the condolences to the family, and especially to the member for Elizabeth, and also to Robert Sandy Sands and all the other siblings and family members on behalf of the Great Progressive Liberal Party. Also to the late former cabinet minister and parliamentary colleague, Fenton O'Neill, son of the late Basil Nemore, man who believed in me, also believed in Andros. So we are saddened by his passing, and may his soul rest in peace. And also on Saturday, I must attend the funeral for the late Nelson Chucker Niels Leeden, in Cargill Creek, this Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. in Cargill Creek. So I want to say to his wife and to the children, especially Cherie and Terrence, that our thoughts and our prayers are with also especially the community of Bearing Point and Cargill Creek, Andros. And before I said, I also want to say a special thank you to the Prime Minister's very frank and candid answer to being in my community and answering questions and Andros and meeting with our people privately. I also want to wish him the very best in his efforts and his accounts his years. I'll say to the Prime Minister, count your years. Let's count your years very carefully because the Bahamians have learned how to do some things very uniquely. They put you in, and they take you, and they've learned how to take prime ministers out. God bless you, and let's have a good summer together. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Garden Hills.
And to say to them, as we break, that our back-to-school party is presently scheduled for the third week in August, and you will get more updates from social media and through the community. I also want to say to the wonderful people in the Bozane town area that we intend to have dumpsters in your area so that you can put all of your waste in the dumpsters over the weekend. We anticipate that the area is overgrown in some areas, and as expected, we will be moving some vehicles as well as moving other waste products from the area. Mr. Speaker, I also want to extend condolences to two persons. Firstly, Dr. Evanette McPhee, who is a Mangrove Key woman, but I know the family very well, particularly because her brother Harold and the other brother Ivan both came out of education. And it's a really sad occasion for us to see Evanette in this manner. She did her best as a public officer in public health and was a really down-home person, as my man from Mangrove Key would say. So I want to say to that family, on behalf of my own family, we extend condolences and we wish that God will continue to bless and be with this family at this their time of grief. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to extend condolences to the family of Ms. Pauline Brown. If you know Black Point Exuma, right next to our house was the Brown residence. In fact, my father's grandmother decided to offer him and the man we called Richie at the time, Richie Brown, this property on the hill. Yes. And they grew up as brothers. And Pauline was really a caretaker for all of us on the hill, as we'd call it in my hometown. So to Bob, Cynthia, Glenn, and the rest of the family, I want to just remind you that she's gone to a better place. She was one of the deacons in the church. And so as we mourn her loss, just remember God knows what he's doing, and we are not here to question him. So we extend condolences to that entire family and indeed all of the family members of Black Point.
Sorry, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would just like to make a correction. Something I said yesterday when I was thanking members of the Independence Committee who worked along with me. And I made mention of three of my lady bosses at the Cabinet Office. One I named as Antoinette Pindo. And In actuality, it should have been Antoinette Brown. So to Mrs. Antoinette Brown for incorrectly changing her name or marrying her off, I want to, just again thank Antoinette Brown for all of the hard work that she gave to us to help make this independence celebration a wonderful celebration. Also, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to join the member for South and Central Andros in thanking all the facilitators, wonderful facilitators of summer camps that were taking place throughout the community of Fort Charlotte this summer in particular. Facilitators at the Fort Charlotte Community Center on Boyd Road for their wonderful 4 weeks of camp, summer camp. Summer camp ends, the closing of the summer camp is tomorrow night at St. Michael's, and I'd like to let them know that I will be joining them for the closing of that camp, and also to the wonderful facilitators at the Urban Renewal Summer Camp. They ended their camp last week, and to let them know that I'm looking forward to joining them and the kids. We're treating the kids to a day at Galleria Cinema on Monday, so I'm looking forward to joining them on Monday for the closing out on our field trip. I usually take one, but Independence took a little bit out of me this year, so I wasn't able to join them in the camp. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I too would like to say that the Fort Charlotte Back to School event would be taking place on August 18th, Saturday, August 18th, and we too, like the member from Garden Hills, will be providing information via social media and the likes and other media forms to the residents so they can pay attention to that. Again, I'd like to say to the residents of Fort Charlotte, we're taking a break from the House, so I'll be spending a little more time with you in the community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statements? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know my seat is in your periphery, so I don't take offense. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to quickly, because I omitted to mention in my presentation, and I've already got calls from Exuma. I don't think I'll be able to go back to Exuma. Notwithstanding Mr. Garden Hill's representation of the Exuma boys, as we like to say. But I also would wish to add Tall Pines and my family's condolences to our very good friend, the Honorable Fenton E. Moore, for his contribution to Exuma, to South Beach, and to the country as a whole. So I wanted Tall Pines and my condolences to be added. But be remiss also, Mr. Speaker, if I don't add Tall Pines and my condolences to the member for Elizabeth, Dr. Sands, and his family. Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that I would know Dr. Sands as a colleague here in this house, but his brother, Sandy Sands, actually gave me my first real job at Nassau Beach. And I'd like to give him and his sister, Diana, our professional colleague, our learned friend, Diane Stewart, our condolences, and to say that definitely, one of our members said that the children should move towards being like their dad. I would say that his kids have, in fact, demonstrated and has represented his family and this country very well. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Bishop Roberts of Five Porches Church, want to add our condolences also to that family and to that church in the heart of Over the Hill, as we spoke about Over the Hill in this particular bill that was just passed. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Tall Pines, as usual, also wish to put our residents on notice that we have the tentative date of the 25th of August, 2018 for our back to school event at the community center on Faith Avenue, number 42 Faith Avenue. Like the member for Fort Charlotte, we will be on break, but we will still be in our community addressing and dealing with their needs as usual. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence, and have a wonderful summer break. My colleagues also. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Very quickly, on August 18, in Marco City, we'll be holding our back-to-school extravaganza, targeting somewhere in the vicinity of 1,200 to 1,500 young people. In the case of the summer program, I'd like to say a special thanks to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, and offer apologies. It's our understanding that some of the students for the summer program had 1 week shortened that will in fact be replaced. So we want to just put all of those students on notice to make sure that we will be getting in contact with you to make sure that that program continues for the additional week. In addition, there will be a basketball tournament. The press conference will be held tomorrow to announce it in Marco City. The Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources an entire team will be going to Grand Bahama on tomorrow to view all of the facilities, meet with all of the staff members. And of course, the regatta desk will be in Exuma on 2 occasions over the course of the next 2 weeks, and Cat Island. And finally, I want to say a special thanks to the NTA, the National Training Agency. They, along with the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, will be conducting courses for all Bahamians who are interested in joining the dive industry so that you can get your certification, so we can increase the number of Bahamians on the various commercial fishing vessels that are going out and reduce the issuance of work permits to persons from other countries in the dive sector. This is very important. We'd like all persons interested in the dive industry get in contact with the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, the Permanent Secretary, submit your name. We're going to begin the courses in short order. Happy summer to everybody. We will still be working, members of the public, every single day on your behalf, even when we're not here in the Parliament. God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of my colleagues and here to the opposition as well. August Monday weekend, we're having a Back to Bay Fest in Tarpon Bay. And at the same time, we're having the same function happening in Hatcher Bay around the same time. So I extend that invitation to my colleagues. And to the residents in Central and South Eleuthera, the back to school program will be on schedule. We haven't set a date as yet, but we will be announcing it shortly. So I want to say a special wish all of you guys, all my colleagues, a happy summer break. Take care, and to my constituents the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement? That's it. I'd simply like to say to the constituents of Nassau Village that the summer camp being hosted at the community center with have its closing ceremonies on Friday the 3rd of August. And an invitation is being extended to the entire community of Nassau Village on the 3rd of August at the community center on Taylor Street. We invite you to come out to support your children. They represent the future, and they've been having a wonderful time to this point. And it was just amazing to see the skills of the youngsters as it relates to making handicrafts and other art forms. And I want to say a special thank you to the principal of the summer camp, Mrs. Sandra Sajudas, and her staff. They have been exceptional with the children. Just one more matter before we move on the order of business, and that is Um, I know this is the time to take a break, but I believe the urgency of this matter requires that somehow we begin this process so that by the end of the year, we can have resolved this issue with our rules of procedure. And so I have asked the clerk to prepare a digital form of the rules and a list of suggestions to be forwarded on to the Rules Committee so that the Rules Committee can begin its work in terms of a review of the rules and hopefully a publication of the new rules. Appointments of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister, I'm going to give notice of the following questions, Mr. Speaker, for the Prime Minister. The member for Kalani. Will the Prime Minister advise whether the government of the Bahamas has entered into an agreement for the private management of Prince George Dock? 2. If so, will the Prime Minister advise the identity of the management entity and the terms of the terms of the said agreement? Will the Prime Minister advise whether the government is in dialogue with a foreign entity for the management of the Prince George Dock? Will the Prime Minister advise if the government has entered into any consultations with stakeholders at Prince George Dock as to the terms,
Go on, please don't be.
as to the terms of the agreement, of any agreement or any potential agreement and the potential impact this will have on their standing?
Nobody has. Go on.
As the Prince George Dock is owned by the Bahamian people, will the Prime Minister advise if there is an agreement for the dock to be handed over to private management, and if there is an agreement for the dock to be handed over to private management, sorry, I have this by handwritten, will he kindly advise why the Bahamian people have not been apprised of this significant event?
Sign that.
You have to send them up, right? That's all, right? Order that the notices the questions be brought up. The notices be brought up. Order that the notices do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. Honorable member for South Central Andres, further notices
Thank you, Mr.
for
Speaker.
future meetings.
All notices standing in the name of Her Majesty's Royal Official remain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I renew all matters in the name of the government, and I do move that the House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 19th, 2018.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do adjourn to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 19th of September, 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose would stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do adjourn to the 19th of September, Wednesday, the 19th of September at 10 a.m. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House, the House stands adjourned.